Howdy, hey, aloha, y'all. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Whether you are live or it's by rebroadcast, this is book reading time. Me reading from this book, The Art of Spiritual Leadership 40 Laws to Transform Your Life and the World. And coincidentally enough, it was me that wrote it. Further, fun fact, my daughter, age 13 at the time, designed the cover. So, this book, by the way, you could, if you wish, purchase through any of the major booksellers in an electronic version, electronic e-reader version, or softcover, hardcover. You could even get the Audible version, which maybe begs the question, why are you doing this, Daniel? Well, little bit different than in the other places. One, because we're going little by little. Two, this costs nothing. Not that the book or the Audible costs a whole lot. However, this is completely free. Three, if you wish, you can comment or ask questions. I won't read all the comments while I'm reading here because I'm not so into multitasking that way. However, I will pause, section break, check the comments. I will also come back to check the comments to see if you got questions or comments by rebroadcast. And last thing, it's different here because there's the space and opportunity for me to share new thoughts since I wrote this. It's been 2 years since I got it published, and also maybe some of the stories behind the stories. So there you go. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We've been doing this, so if you want more, you can look back. We've been reading, and we are currently in chapter 3, which is called Rock Bottom, and it's worth sharing with you. I think is it called the epigraph, the quotation that begins this chapter? It's a Buddhist proverb. From the darkest mud grows the most beautiful lotus flower. Now, moving forward to where we are, page 95, section called We See the World. A long time ago, there was a walled city at whose gates an old man was accustomed to sitting. One day, a traveler paused at the city entrance before going in. "Old man," asked the traveler as he wiped his brow and stretched his back, "tell me, what are the people like in this city?" The old man regarded the traveler for a moment, shading his eyes from the sun with his hand. "Well, what were they like where you came from?" The traveler grimaced and shook. "They were a miserable lot, lying, thieving, scheming. They'd steal the shirt off your back if they could." The old man shook his head. "I'm afraid that you'll find they are about the same here." The very next day, another traveler stopped just before heading into the city. "Excuse me," he said, "would you tell me what the people are like in this city?" Again, shading his eyes to see the visitor better, he replied, "What were they like where you came from?" Immediately, the traveler's face broke into a wide smile. They were amazing people, kind, generous. They'd do anything for you. The old man smiled. "You'll find they are much the same here." Spiritual Leadership Axiom 11. We see the world not as it is, but instead as we are. Beliefs, also known as stories, are incredibly powerful because we don't think of them as beliefs. Indeed, we simply presume that they are objective reality. We inherited our belief systems and mostly we took them on as our own without ever considering whether they stood up to scrutiny or were useful. There are so many ways to discover our beliefs. Remember, they tend to stay hidden under the guise of certainty. And one of the first steps is ramping up the observer to become more discerning. We'll come to see that one of the critical steps to creating masterpieces of our lives is to discover what we accept as core principles. Beliefs provide a sense of orientation about the way things are, about the way we are. In yoga language, that self-awareness, self-observation, is called svadhyaya, which means self-study. It's both studying the self with a small s, meaning our ego and personality, including our tendencies, quirks, neuroses, and genius, as well as self with a big S, which points to our higher self, the human spirit, and our highest potential. This is what is meant by know thyself, the inscription at the ancient Greek temple of Delphi. Lao Tzu said, knowing others is wisdom. Knowing yourself is enlightenment. This introspective intelligence is so vital that Patanjali, in the Yoga Sutra, included svadhyaya as one of the keys to realizing our true spiritual potential. Do these three things, he observed, and you will reach samadhi, the sublime state of liberation, union, and bliss. Svadhyaya is one of those three. The other two, tapas, which in Sanskrit means heat or fire, is related to discipline and can also be called action. Remember the axiom, it's not enough to know something in our heads. If we translate this into a spiritual leadership axiom, we assert that wise is as wise does. Action is essential. While there is truth to the oft repeated law of attraction, wishing, hoping, and visualizing only goes so far. Usually, not as far as is required towards our goals. The third key to entering this blissful realm goes by the name of Ishvara, meaning devotion to God or the Supreme. More literally, it is realizing we are the same as the highest. In other words, you are amazing. As we return to Casey's story, let part of yourself be curiously wondering what beliefs and stories the younger me would be formulating about himself, about family, and about the world during this incident. Later, we'll explore it deeper together. Pause, checking comments, of which there are none so far. So, all good. We go on to the next section, which is, if you're joining us here for the first time, this refers to a previous part of this chapter. We're doing a little weaving of stories. I took the flashlight from Casey, turned it on, and ducked my head through the opening into the attic. It was utterly silent. At the near end of the attic, I could see the chicken wire was still in place. The empty box that held our plastic Christmas tree and the ones holding the old decorations were still within easy reach of the opening where I had sloppily placed them. It would soon be time to put all the cheer away. There's no one up here, Casey. Couldn't be. I clicked off the flashlight and reached down to hand it to her. For a moment, I thought we were at the end of it. And now that I'd shown her, somehow this weirdness would disappear. She took in what I said. Then, before she turned and walked away, leaving me holding the flashlight and still awkwardly perched on the stool, she looked straight at me and said, "They heard you coming and got out." Neither Casey nor I talked about what happened after that. The next day, I left for a 3-day ski trip with my best friend Eric's church youth group. It was a Sunday afternoon when I returned home, ruddy-cheeked, sore, and elated from the adventure. The house was abnormally quiet, and as soon as I dropped my bag into the living room, I knew something was amiss. "Sit down, Danny." Mom's voice was kind, if also commanding. "Something's happened, and we need to talk about it." Oh no, I thought. What now? What else? I pulled out a chair and tried to stay back from the smoke cloud that enveloped her. "Something happened while you were away. I had to call the police, and your sister is, well, she's at a facility, a hospital." Mom had said all this while gazing at the space over the table, as if in a trance. Then she turned her eyes to meet mine. "Your sister's in trouble. She needs help. That's why she's there, and I hope to God that they can help her." Mom was emphatic now, more human, though with a panic in her voice that both frightened and annoyed me. Questions raced in my mind. What had happened? You had to call the police? What kind of facility? What did Casey think about all this? I didn't say anything, and I'm embarrassed to admit it now, yet what I wanted most at that moment was to leave the table, to take my bag to my room, remember the skiing, and make some plans for the rest of Christmas break. Mom went on. "The only way she can get help is if she stays there, and she sure as hell doesn't want to stay. She thinks they're out to get her, that I'm out to get her." Mom shook her head, as if to keep herself from letting fear take over. "You don't know this, but your sister's been in situations like this before. She's gotten into bad trouble with drugs. Mom turned her face out toward the gray evening, toward a darkness, and took a fierce drag of her cigarette. After a moment, she exhaled a torrent of smoke and turned back to me. "She's tried to kill herself. Your sister's not well. She's sick. She needs help. And if we can't convince the hospital, they'll have to let her go. Mother of God. And if that happens, I don't know what the hell will happen." My stomach was churning, and I felt dizzy. The smoke, the growing darkness of the room nauseated me. I wanted to turn a light on, or run from the house into the icy clear air outside. I wished that I was part of my best friend Eric's family. Even with his 7 sisters and their bins of food storage in the basement, they at least seemed happy, if not normal. Did anything happen while you were alone with your sister? Is there anything you can think of that might help? We need to make sure she gets treatment. I didn't see any choice, so I told Mom what had happened with the attic. She told me that there would be a hearing on Wednesday, that I'd have to tell the presiding counselor too, and that it was our best chance of helping her, of prevailing upon them to keep her there for treatment. Over the next 2 days, I visited Casey. She didn't want to see Mom, but agreed to see me. She had a room of her own with a high windowed wall covered with something between bars and chain link fence. She paced the room, barely looking at me. "I'll be out soon," she told me. "They can't keep me. I've gotten out before." The counselor was a kind-eyed and soft-spoken man. When Mom and I found his office and he invited us to sit opposite his desk, we discovered that Casey was already there, that she was to be present as well. The 4 of us together in a tiny room with no windows. Casey wouldn't look at me the entire time, and I didn't blame her. Mom had said that I had to tell the counselor everything I knew, yet I didn't know if what I had to say would make a difference in keeping Casey there, or even if her staying there would really be helpful. Casey absolutely didn't think it would be, and the look on her face made it clear that she thought that my telling what had happened was the lowest of betrayals. We finished the meeting. When we finished the meeting, I still didn't know if Casey would be held longer. There was no way of knowing that our eyes would never meet again. They did keep her some days longer, though not surprisingly, she didn't allow me to visit her again. A few days later, I learned from Mom, who must have heard it from Dylan, that Casey had somehow gotten bus fare together and had gone back to San Diego. Well, not the most uplifting place to pause. However, and as you probably know, the story is not over. And again, and you might have missed this if you didn't hear the last installment, I encourage you, yes, the story, and also what would be the beliefs, right? What are the stories that these characters, the younger me, Danny, Casey, at that point in her life, even my mother at the time, what would be the stories and beliefs that they would be forming about themselves and the world? You are becoming even more of a practical psychologist, discovering, learning, and perhaps creating some insight for yourself about your own life. So we shall leave it there, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, happy to hear any comments or questions. If I can be of support to you in your life, please reach out. Let's have a conversation. I'd love to meet you and help you to create whatever you would like in your life. Thanks, y'all. Aloha.